Which of the characters are right for you in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? With a now expanded roster, each having their own unique mechanics as well as new combat additions to the overall combat systems, it can be hard choosing a character that fits your playstyle and party setup. So let's run through each of these characters and give you a general overview of what they are all about, as well as some quick tips for them just to help you guys out. By the end of the video, hopefully you will have an understanding of what each of these characters do and how to get the best out of them. So let us know which of these characters you like the look of or are leaning towards down below. Just a quick note, this video will include minor spoilers showing different characters and their abilities. For some people, this might be considered a spoiler, so we wanted to give you a heads up. But for the rest of you, let's jump into it, starting off with Cloud. Because Cloud is the main character of Final Fantasy VII, you will be playing him a lot during your playthrough. Cloud luckily can do a little bit of everything, but his main focus is close range damage dealing. His attacks can quickly rack up damage on your enemies, scoop together large groups of enemies, and burst them down during stagger windows. Cloud's unique mechanic is all about his ability to switch between his Operator and Punisher mode. Operator mode is his standard mode where players have a bit more mobility and you're able to do a more traditional block. Meanwhile, in Punisher mode, it is more heavily damage focused and will allow you to quickly parry incoming attacks with guarding, making it very useful in comparison to his Operator mode. To switch into Punisher mode, you will press triangle and then you have three options: to parry an incoming attack by holding R1, or perfect time the input of the R1 to nullify the damage and also do a counter. On top of this, you can just tap triangle and this will also act as a short window to counter an enemy. Interestingly, this can also be done during a combo string if you tap triangle at the right time. In addition to this, Cloud also has some moves after you do a dodge input. If you press circle to dodge and then spam square, he will send out blade beams, and if you hold down square, he will rush towards the target enemy and put him in an aerial state. Some of Cloud's more notable skills include his Braver move, which is a hard-hitting attack that also hits harder if you activate it while airborne. His Focus Thrust is also great for building up stagger on enemies when they're pressured. His Triple Slash has him homing in on 3 enemies and slashing them. This is great for some of the more regular enemies that you encounter out in the world. His Prime mode will enhance his Punisher mode, giving it increased potency and some powerful unique attacks when you hold down square while in Punisher mode. His counter stance is also very powerful as a way to instantly counter an enemy. And then he has some aerial abilities that allow him to stay up in the air for extended periods as well as dealing damage, so Cloud has some pretty useful skills. And next we have Aerith, your go-to magic caster and support healer. If you like the idea of someone in your party that can cast big, devastating spells to destroy your enemies, or supportive magic to heal up your team, then she is the one for you. Aerith's unique mechanic allows her to summon a pet called the Fleeting Familiar, and this will target enemies alongside you. To do this, you can hold down square to charge up your attack, which will then spawn a crystal at the enemy location, hitting multiple times and spawning a little butterfly next to you, which is the Fleeting Familiar that will then shoot enemies as you attack and buff your magical attacks. In addition to this, she has various wards that enhance her magical capabilities as well as her allies. Some of the more notable wards include her Arcane Ward that will cause any spell you cast to do a second cast of it for free as a follow-up, and her Radiant Ward, which will cause her basic attacks to turn into laser beams, which greatly speeds up how fast she can build ATB, and the ward itself stops you taking damage while casting spells inside of it. Just as a quick note, you can have multiple wards out at once and you can stack them on top of each other. Aerith also has some very good damaging skills with Transcendence and Ray of Judgment. Ray of Judgment is particularly good as it can increase the stagger multiplier on a downed enemy. And next up we have the dad of the group, and he just happens to be a ranged powerhouse. It's Barret, a tank, support, and ranged damage dealer. He's someone that we 100% recommend having in your party if you're having a hard time with some of the combat or bosses. Barret's unique mechanic is called Overcharged, and this will send out a barrage of projectiles that not only quickly fill his ATB gauge, but also do some hefty damage and stagger. This, however, does have a very long recharge time, but it can be sped up by pressing the triangle button, or you can speed this animation up by pressing the triangle button right after an ability or a full attack string. Barret's notable skills include his Focus Shot that is a great way to quickly build up stagger on enemies and will use all of your ATB gauge. His Steel Skin is great as it boosts his defense and makes him harder to flinch in combat, while his Lifesaver ability will allow him to tank damage for the entire team and increase his maximum HP. He has some awesome damage focused skills with things like Maximum Fury that uses all of his ATB to unleash a barrage of shots on an enemy, as well as his bonus rounds that reloads his ammo with special stagger enhanced bullets. Barret also has a synergy skill called Mad Dash that allows him to block incoming attacks while narrowing the gap between him and his enemies. So if you're looking for a range damage dealer or a powerhouse of a tank, Barret is one to think about. Next up, if you want a character with insane damage output, then Tifa is one to consider. She's a close range character but really packs a punch as well as quite a few kicks. Tifa's unique mechanic is actually really cool and revolves around her building up levels called chi levels. To gain these chi levels, you will need to build up ATB in order to cast her Unbridled Strength or Unfettered Fury. These skills will increase her capabilities by boosting her damage, extending her combos, and making her evasion more effective. But that isn't everything, because you can actually spend these chi levels to execute attacks by pressing the triangle button. If you execute these during a stagger window, it will actually increase the stagger multiplier on the enemy, allowing your team to do some follow-up burst damage. Tifa's notable skills include her Chi Trap that will leave a ball of energy that consistently deals damage to enemies inside of it over time. Her True Strike is fantastic for adding a quick chunk to the stagger damage bonus. Her Focus Strike is a counter that, if hit during the start, will refill your ATB and nullify any incoming damage. She also has synergy skills that allow her to go up into the air, and Reverse Scale is great for aerial combos too. So if you want a high output, rapid hitting damage dealer, Tifa is definitely one to think about. Next we have Red 13, who is a close range tank and is all about revenge. Red's unique mechanic is called the Vengeance Gauge, and it can be a bit weird to fill, but with it, Red is looking to be one of the more powerful characters in the game. It's actually pretty easy to fill the Vengeance Gauge once you get the flow down. You can fill the skill gauge by using specific skills or taking damage while guarding. The best way to do this is to tap the guard button as you're about to get hit, both nullifying the incoming damage with a precision guard and also building up the Vengeance Gauge. But then you can let go of the guard button and perform a counter spin afterwards as a sort of counter attack. A quick tip to know is that you will not be able to do the counter if you are still holding down the guard button. So after getting hit while guarding, release the guard button, press square to do a counter, and you'll see that the window is pretty big. After you fill the gauge, it will allow you to enter into Vengeance mode by pressing triangle. This will increase Red's attack power and dodge spin. Something cool that you can do with Red is hold down the basic attack square button to do a spin attack on enemies, which is great for AoE damage and to build up his meter, and while in Vengeance mode you can also use Siphon Fang by pressing triangle, allowing you to steal life from enemies and deal damage. Some of Red 13's more notable skills include his Sentinel Stance, which is a guarding skill that will fill his gauge up a bit if successful. His Chilling Roar is great as it will counter enemies as they hit you with ice damage and fill up his gauge too. His Reaper's Touch and Crescent Claw ability will scale depending on his current HP and Vengeance gauge and do insane damage if pulled off correctly. So if you're looking for a unique tank, Red 13 might be one to think about. Next up, who doesn't want to play as a ninja? This Materia Hunter is a perfect blend of both close and ranged combat, as well as magical attacks, and it's Yuffie. Her unique mechanic is that she's able to throw out her shuriken by pressing triangle, and this will allow her to do ninjutsu magic from ranged, while her shuriken continues to rack up physical damage on the enemy. Just throw out the shuriken with triangle, back off, and then start spamming square to do these magical attacks. Interestingly, you can change the elemental damage of these ninjutsu magic attacks by using her elemental ninjutsu ability, cycling through and applying the one necessary for the fight. While this is her unique mechanic, we played a lot of the game and we think one of her skills, which is called Doppelganger, is actually super unique, as it allows her to summon a clone of herself that will do follow-up attacks with her, and this also applies to big magical spells, allowing her to quickly scale how much damage output she's actually dealing. Some of Tifa's notable skills include her Brumal Form. This is an evasion skill quite similar to Tifa's Focus Strike. She also has Banishment that deals a large amount of damage but scales off of how many other ATB commands she's done before executing the move. Her Storm's Fury ability is a heavy-hitting attack that can only be used while having 3 ATB gauges, and her Art of War ability is another attack-focused ability that will also increase to Supreme Art of War if you use it back-to-back. So if you want to play a ninja that has a mix of all different damage types, then Yuffie is definitely one to go with. And then we have Cait Sith, a magic-focused tank that's pretty good at everything and can definitely output some spicy damage. Cait Sith's unique mechanic involves him summoning a Moogle that actually enhances his capabilities. While Cait Sith can attack by himself using square or triangle, he can also summon his Moogle via the Let's Ride command from the ability menu, and this is where he really shines. The Moogle will attack enemies by itself, but Cait Sith can actually mount it and do abilities while riding it. This includes extra moves that he didn't have access to before riding it. In addition to this, while mounted, if you attack the same target as your Moogle by pressing or holding the square button, you will do even more damage and increase how fast you build up ATB. So this kind of makes it best to be on your Moogle as much as possible. Attacking with the Moogle will fill the Moogle meter. This increases the level of charge, which gives you access to more powerful abilities. At 1 charge, it will give you access to party buffs, while at level 2 it will give you access to party debuffs. Some of Cait Sith's notable skills include his Moogle Knuckle, which is awesome because it very quickly increases the stagger damage bonus on downed enemies. His roll of the dice is nice too for a random result, but depending on what the dice lands on, this could be an AoE buff of different varieties or multiple damage dealing spells. His Lady Luck ability is fantastic as an AoE crit rate buff, and his Moogle magic is really cool as it calls in his currently slotted summon to do a random ability, and this can be their 1 or 2 ATB cost move, making it very good later on in the game. Also, his Limit Break at level 1 and 2 have some variants, which is very cool to see. So hopefully now you have an understanding of all of the characters and what you should be doing when you play them. Let us know down below which characters you're planning to have in your main party and why, and subscribe for more Final Fantasy Rebirth coming your way soon.